Today, Scorcher Toys at anymoon.com is doing something different. This video will be a totally unfair comparison of a model to a toy. I get a lot of feedback that I say the word toy too often, which is totally valid. I do say that word too much in my reviews and I am working on it, but in this hobby with so many models, it's an important distinction. Up first is the Yamato 160 scale fan racer model kit. Full disclosure, the reason this channel doesn't feature models is because I have no modeling experience and I wouldn't want people to think less of a kit just because I have no talent for it. Also, I barely have enough time to do toy reviews, so the time and effort a model requires are an absolute non-starter for me. So, big shout out to my buddy Earl who took the time to put this model together and then let me borrow it for this shoot. Yamato released 3 flavors of the fan racer, all for 3,000 yen. The first release lacked a pilot figure, which was rude because the kit has no landing gear. You could only create a flying fan racer that would have no one in the cockpit. I suspect they wanted you to grab the pilot out of your 160 V2 VF1D toy. There was a pearl gray version and a clear version later that did include a totally new pilot figure sculpt. The model we're looking at today started off as a pearl gray version. The competition is the Bandai DX Fan Racer toy that was only included with the DX VF1D, which was released as a Tamashii web exclusive for 21,000 yen in July of 2021. As you can see, that's about a 3,000 yen premium, making this Fan Racer toy similarly priced to Yamato's model. Since the VF1D also has an extra pilot seat for Batroid mode, an extra fist, and an extra Minmay figure, you could argue that the DX Fan Racer was actually cheaper than the Yamato model. This Fan Racer also lacks a pilot figure, but since it's packaged with the VF1D, it makes a little more sense that you're going to be able to grab that same Hikaru pilot figure, maybe put your 1D in Batroid mode, and have everything covered. Like the Yamato, we neither get plug-in nor integrated landing gear. Unlike the Yamato, we do get an included display stand. I'm not quite sure why the included display stand isn't a Tamashii Stage Act display stand, which would work just fine with the Fan Racer. So if you've got one lying around and you don't like the included display stand, that's certainly an option for you. But this display stand is pretty cool on its own. It's got a nice base, it's translucent, opaque, it can go up and down, and it can pivot left and right. And since it connects via a peg, it's very easy to rotate the toy around however you want to do it. So tons of flexibility there, pretty decent display stand. My only real complaint here is how low the toy is to the ground, no matter what you do. The Tamashii Stage Act stands have extensions that you could use. So if you did want to get this higher for a different pose, since it only weighs like 20 grams, just about any display stand is going to work, and that common peg size helps. Yamato's sold separately Mighty Block display stand is a fantastic complement to this piece, but it added another 1,500 yen to the cost. So both versions have a distinct lack of accessories that you folks with 3D printers should view as a challenge. And of course, if you're a modeler, you could just kit bash some stuff, I'm sure. Yamato eventually gave us a pre-attack on the STF-1 Hikaru pilot figure, but they didn't give us one with the helmet or with a Minmay in his lap. Bandai gives us the helmeted pilot, but not his original look and no compatible Minmay. Of course, the DX is a toy, and the Yamato is a model. Though it's a simple model, putting it together is still a process. Check the description of this video for a link to a step-by-step hosted over at Macross World. Here's how Earl laid it out to me. You'll need to prepare the parts and give them a prime. Yamato did a great job with the fit of everything, almost too good. Test fitting parts can make them very difficult to pry back apart. Then you'll fill and sand the gaps before doing some more priming. Paint the internals and add the interior details. Does your seat look new or like it's been satin a bunch of times? Maybe some shiny blue paint for the gauge surfaces. Next, you may want to tackle the edges of the canopy, and here's a pro tip from Earl. Test your canopy fit first. These models have a small fit issue with the canopy where it will not close properly. Before you paint anything, figure out if you need to trim somewhere to leave the canopy fully functional. Earl glued his canopy shut. Bring the fuselage together and fill and sand to eliminate the pesky seam that runs down the center. One weakness of the Yamato sculpt is that it doesn't have the front landing gear door. If you'd like to correct that, you'll need to do some etching. Continue the painting journey. You may want to darken the joints before applying the base coat. Apply masking and then determine what shades you want to use. Paint your body, paint your trim, paint your engine components, paint your exhaust cowls, and bust out that magnifying equipment to paint that pilot figure. Pro tip again, for parts like the air inlet and the vertical stabilizer and the engine that are supposed to have cavities but they'd be very shallow, use Musu Black to create the illusion of depth. Let it all cure and pray it comes out as you intended. Unfortunately for Earl, his paint failed, revealing numerous spider cracks on every surface. If you know why this happens, leave a comment! He may know already, but I'm curious what went wrong. A little buffing, a little polishing, and the finished product may actually look a little more realistic for the problem, so that's all right. Being a fan of airplanes, Earl thought a hint, and I apologize, I'm probably going to butcher this word, of otake coming through the paint. That's like a primer that's meant to fight corrosion. Would make it look more like a teenager wasn't able to keep his well-worn flyer looking factory fresh. And this is where you'll make your own weathering decisions. The exhaust cowls would probably puff out some soot from cold starts. You'll find some other places where you think maybe a little more wear would be in order. And after the final paint applications, assemble your finished product. If you want something more attractive than a Yamato Mighty Block display stand, you can modify a number of display stands easily enough. Earl took the time to create a base with a realistic dirt effect. The guy over at robotechcollections.fr did a crash diorama and created landing gear. It is super cool. And again, check out that step-by-step that I've linked to in the description of this video. When the model is completed, you may be shocked to find it's actually larger than the DX toy. 1/48 scale, like the DX, is bigger than 1/60 scale, like the Yamato. So what's happening? Even the pilot figure included with the clear and gray versions looks larger than the normal Yamato 160 V2 pilot. In fact, it looks about the same size as the Bandai DX pilot. Part of the problem comes from the lack of Canon measurements for the Fan Racer. Macross Chronicle has since suggested it was 5.3 meters, while Macross Mecha Manual calculated it as maybe 5.9 meters based on the character heights, which makes the DX toy right around 145 to 150 scale, which I would say is close enough. Yamato must have figured the vehicle was supposed to be 6.5 meters, but it really does look too large when placed next to their VF1. Well, the animation wasn't always consistent, so maybe you're thinking, how much is this really going to break my mind that the model is a little bit larger? And so here it is with the Yamato 160 V2, and you can see how that would look. I think it does pair better with the Yamato 148 on the right. Of course, if you have a DX VF1, it is also 148 scale. So that's going to be about the same, saying the Yamato actually would pair okay with that if you remember it a little bit on the bigger side. Or we could go ahead and swap in
our DX toy for another scale comparison. There you can see it works, I would say, better with the 160V2 than certainly the Yamato did, but it does scale appropriately with the 148s as well. But again, everybody remembers things a little bit differently, so whatever you think works best, you got a couple different options. Like the DX VF1, Bandai has again gone over the top on the painted on detail. We get the pilot name here, a notice about what type of ceramic rotary engine it has, a danger warning here about the boosters that are all along the back. We even get Hikaru's H on the vertical stabilizer, along with a little note that there is an inlet in the middle of that vertical stabilizer, and of course they've painted that inlet black as well. And then we even get, looking from above, some no step warnings, front and back. And then if we flip the toy over, there's also a keep clear warning next to the inlet, and another warning down below. So very, very nice external detail, and we have the little signal lights on either wing. High marks there, very attractive toy. And of course, you could add all of those markings to your model if you have the Yamato model, but it would have been really nice if Yamato had given us some water slide decals. So it's a bit of a shame. You're gonna have to raid your other model kits to get the decals you want to add all those little markings if you want to compete with the Bandai. But which one looks more like the line art? Well, I have made them the same size using magic. And there are a couple little things that I do prefer on the DX. I like how the vertical stabilizer comes down closer to the canopy, and I like the width of the fan's cowl a little bit better. But these are very minor improvements over the Yamato, and I would say overall they're both excellent sculpts. If you really want to recreate that scene where Hikaru is blasting past the angel birds, you'd probably want to pop these bad boys off, and it's a cool feature that you can pop them off. I thought it was a missed opportunity that the missile effects from the High Metal R toys can't plug into that, because there are 6 of them, and it would have been awesome to have these all plugged in and then have that flying past. But if you're crafty enough, you can create your own smoke effect and get that pose to happen on your shelf. From a features perspective, you can open and close the Yamato canopy, build it either way. You can have no pilot in there. You could detail up that inside of the cockpit as much as you like, and I'd say a pretty good sculpt to start with, which is nice. And then if you wanted to, you could build it without the back of the boosters on and do your own smoke effect, kind of like we just talked about for the Bandai. Now, Bandai has the canopy that opens and closes as well. I've got the pilot out there to demonstrate. Also a pretty good mold, not a lot of paint details inside that cockpit, just the seat, but you have the right controls, you have the gauges that are popped up like they're supposed to, which is all very nice. I've also already shown you that you can pop these little pieces off on the back, and then you can also spin that interior propeller if you like, but that's about it for play factor.
The DX Fan Racer is well proportioned and nicely detailed. Like the Yamato kit, it's lacking some accessories, but you don't need any talent or time to put this thing together, so I love it as an extra to my DX VF1D. I do have one question though. Where's the High Metal R version? Ain't nobody got the money, space, and desire to purchase a bunch of DX Angel Birds and the DX VF1D to recreate Hikaru's dramatic entrance and then come up with some stand that would make that all work. It's just not happening. In the High Metal R line, Bandai already has the Trident Stage Act stand and the stands they included with the Glaug or the missile accessories. They could easily release an Angel Birds diorama gift set that would be totally dope. So get on it, Bandai. And if you're watching me conclude this rant, thank you. I think you'll enjoy my content and you should subscribe. Also, hit thumbs up if you think others might find this entertaining and leave a comment if you'd like to discuss. Thanks, everyone.